have a very clear memory of having a conversation with Rick Craig in the early 1980s. Rick Craig was a BCTF and Latin America activist, and he talked to me one day about an idea he had for forming a BC-based non-governmental organization, NGO, in order to bring together Canadian unions, or BC unions really, with communities and unions in Latin America. It was a time of huge interest and fervent kind of action here in Vancouver and in BC around Central America in particular, because of the Sandinista revolution and the civil wars that were going on in Guatemala and El Salvador. US hegemony was being challenged. It was also being really exerted by the US. So there was this huge conflict going on there in a geopolitical sense, as well as on the ground with people's lives and communities.
Co-development was very much a product that came out of the very incredible international solidarity that was happening during the late 1970s and the early 1980s. And in those days, the original work of solidarity had actually started back in '73 with Chile and the Chile Human Rights Defense Committee, and that morphed into the Nicaragua Human Rights Defense Committee in '77. And it was involved in actually bringing exposure to Central America at that point, to British Columbia. And then later on, that became the Central American Support Committee that grew from Nicaragua to include Guatemala and El Salvador. If you work with groups like Oxfam and CUSO, you can at least get a third matching if you do projects. And the matching is really helpful, because it means if they raise 30,000, we can put it 3 times more for the projects. So what we decided, we said, look at as much as they've been so fundamental, we really need something new. We need a new organization, an organization that has a different perspective. And the perspective is that, the union to union should happen. But not just that, but the goal isn't that it's all about CoDev, it's all about the teachers, it's all about the trade union, it's about the fishermen. They need to own the programming. And so we needed some kind of a vehicle that could establish the relationships, help, maybe even apply to see it and get funding, and then build projects, and then the teachers and the other unions would own those projects, and they wouldn't have to have an international program. They would just need to have an international fund and support it. So that's when the idea to create co-development came. There wasn't anything like it in the country, and we said, let's figure this out.
Well, my earliest memory is when 5 of us, I believe it was 5 of us, it might have been 6, activists got together in my living room and decided that we wanted to form an international organization that was based on solidarity, and that was based on the West Coast. One of the very first projects that we ever encountered was with SUTEP, the Peruvian Teachers Organization. And I went to the South with one of the other founding members, Mario Lee, and I wanted in particular to meet with the women of SUTEP and to set up a women's program, if that was possible. Now, when I did meet, there were no women there. I said I wanted to meet with women, and they said, it's not really much of an issue for SUTEP. But anyways, I persisted, and we did meet with several of the women, and indeed they did need assistance, and they were very interested in starting women's programs and women's solidarity programs.
My name's Janet Rutledge, and myself and my husband Bill Brassington were founding members of CoDev. We were there from the beginning, and I'm actually kind of shocked to hear that was 40 years ago. But CoDev continues to play an important role in international solidarity. And one of the things that moved Bill and I about having that connection with working people in Latin America is that when they win, we win.
I was the director responsible for international solidarity at the BCTF for almost 40 years. And during that time, I worked with CoDev as our main partner in the work that we were doing in Latin America. I was on the very first delegation that CoDev took to Central America in 1985, at the, just a couple months after it was founded as an organization. Teacher leaders from Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. And we visited 4 countries. This, of course, was a time when Central America was in the midst of civil wars and governments that were controlled by the military. We went to Honduras first, where the teachers' union had been taken over by the military government. And the authentic leadership was trying to maintain a separate organization that was the legitimate union, and we were able to take resources for them to be able to do that. And then we went on to Nicaragua, where we, of course, it was during the Contra War. We did, see we went, to the area where some of the conflict was going on. But mostly we visited with schools and with the teachers union. And at that time there were teacher union leaders in exile from Guatemala and El Salvador, who were the Sandinistas had, and the teachers union there, were looking after them in exile. We were able to look at some of the resources that were being used by the schools that had been developed by a grant from the BCTF as part of the literacy crusade after the Sandinistas took over. From there we went to El Salvador, where the union was formally legal, but where they were forbidden to meet. And we had to, meet the executive by subterfuge, traveling around in, various ways to not identify who we were going to see or what we were doing there. And then we went to Guatemala, where the unions were all illegal, and where the teachers had created an insurance agency to insure the lives of teachers. And so it gave them a reason for, as an underground group, for the investigation when teachers disappeared, whether they had been killed or were still alive, in order to decide whether to pay the life insurance. So that experience for me was really fundamental in seeing the incredible resilience and the courage of teachers in their unions to continue the work under the most severe conditions on behalf of teachers and education, and really cemented my commitment to international solidarity.
International solidarity is a part of the larger solidarity that working people and civil society and democracies all together need to be working together against basically the onslaught of the oligarchies and fascism. The end goal is a brave new world. I really believe it's going to flip one way or the other, and there's a tremendous potential to bring the progressive movements around the world together. And in many ways, those progressive movements are more advanced in the South than they are. We have a lot to learn from the struggles that they've had, and the victories they've had, the setbacks they've had, the strategies they've used. So it's not so much solidarity that we can help you as there was back in the 80s, raising money and consciousness for Central America, but I think it's a much more two-way street now.
So I think CoDev is unique in that it's, it does a lot of work with grassroots organizations and helps make sure they have funding, etc. But I think the unique part of CoDev is that they bring those organizations together with like-minded people between Canada and Latin America. One of the favorite parts of my job was connecting leaders and grassroots activists from unions and social justice organizations in Latin America, with leaders and activists from unions and social justice groups here in Canada. And you could really see when you were, you'd have this moment of translating where there's that delay, and then you would see people's kind of like eyes light up when they heard this very common thing. They're like, oh, I deal with that in my job.
One of the really important parts of CoDev's work in its partnerships with and facilitating partnerships between Canadian social movements and those in Latin America is the longevity. So, for example, working with the Central American teachers organizations, when CoDev first began its work, there were almost no women in the leadership, even though something like 70% of Central American teachers are women. And CoDev focused its work on supporting women's secretariats, supporting leadership training with women. They still do that, and at least in most of the teachers' unions in Central America, I really saw a transformation by the mid-teens of the century, in that there is many more leaders, women leaders in the organization. The kind of priorities of the organization had also begun to change to better really reflect their membership, given that the majority of members were women. A really kind of good example is someone like Bessie from the primary school teachers union, or college they call them in Honduras, who began getting involved in her union by attending a workshop that was offered by another teachers organization, and that got her interested in working for strengthening women's roles in the union. She went on to become the women's secretary of her union, and from there became the president of the union, and is now the president of the Federation of all the Central American Teachers Associations. So her involvement first came through participating in a workshop supported by CoDev, and all the way through she's been a really strong ally of CoDev, but also in carrying out work aimed at equity and justice for female teachers.
So I went to Cuba in October of 2022, not really knowing what being on a delegation was going to be like. We got on a plane, we arrived in Cuba, took the bus ride to Havana, and were greeted by our sister union, SINTAF, in SINTAF, Havana. When you're in a country whose constitution begins with Cuba belongs to the workers, it's really, really moving. Being part of a delegation and having the opportunity to meet with public sector workers all across Havana was really meaningful, because it really, demonstrated to me that our struggle, while very different, is also very much the same. The work that QPBC does with CoDev is particularly meaningful because our partners are other unions, and a worker, like our members who are in a union, can see themselves in those unions in our partner countries down in Latin America. It's not about just giving folks money and say, here, 1, 2, 3, go. I think what money does is give these unions agency and resources to be able to train their members the way that we train our members. And in ways, I know that if we ever had to call on them, they would come and help us. So it's the core value and the core principle of solidarity. I think knowing that somebody else has your back is really, really meaningful. So CoDevelopment Canada is an organization I'm really proud that QPBC supports. I'm also super pumped that the workers at CoDevelopment Canada are members of CUPE Local 1004. So they're part of our CUPE family. And CoDev's existence is really important because it grounds the work that we do in other countries in the trade union movement. By making those connections, helping us build relationships with unions in Latin America, we wouldn't be able to do it without CoDev. The majority of labor leaders don't speak Spanish or or the languages in order to engage in those countries. So one, the value of having someone who not only speaks the language itself, but speaks the language of the labor movement as well. And so being able to connect us to the unions in those countries, I think also, just like I said, it grounds the work that we do here in the work that happens somewhere else. We know with our partner unions that it goes to training, it goes to all kinds of equipment that's needed. So being able to assist and help them do the work of representing their members and collective bargaining and all of the stuff that we hold so dear as trade unionists is something that is really meaningful, and I'm really grateful that CoDev can help us create, build, and really foster just excellent international solidarity where both partners can learn from each other.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Henao Castrillon. I'm originally from Colombia, and I've been responsible for the education program at CoDevelopment Canada for the last 3 years. So the education program at CoDev is focused on building relationships between Canadian teacher organizations and Latin American organizations that share the same interest in defending public education. And public education, we need to understand it as more than what happens in the classroom. The defense of public education means that these teachers organizations are working against this huge and damaging trend or wave of neoliberalism in Latin America and also here in the whole Americas now. The teachers organizations that we're working with are focused on different, they have different issues that are affecting their specific context, but all of them are focused on promoting and defending public education in some way or another.
My name is Nadia Revelo. I am the program director of the Human and Labor Rights program at CoDevelopment Canada since 2023. I feel like first that co-development is a tool for social transformation, and also is a tool that was created by the Canadian society that was paying attention about what happened in Latin America and how that was connected with the reality in the 70s, 80s. This tool is a kind of bridge between the reality in Central America, South America, and the reality in Canada. And I feel like an agent in that process of social transformation, and my work is I am kind of a cross-cultural agent in which I am trying to interpret what happened in Latin America to present here to our partners and in the other side too. And my program, as Alexandra said, that is very interesting, is what happened with the people during the 12 years of education, but what happened with the people during the time that they are working, what are their labor conditions. And in general, I can say that all my partners, they are worried about social justice. You know, for example, thinking about the sweet shop or maquila factory workers that are overall women in Central America. They are worried about what is going to happen with their health after they finish or they are retired. Many don't have the opportunity to retire because they had to leave their work before because they have many injuries caused by the very bad conditions in their workplaces. So they are talking about the rest of their life. Usually we are prepared to go to work and what happened after. So, and I think in this case, co-development has been very key in supporting the part of education and supporting the other side, and also protecting and showing and informing the public in Canada about what happened with human rights defenders, like what happened, for example, in Colombia. We work with Nomades in Colombia, that is an organization that has been showing the problems with the people who have forced to leave the regions, their territories because of violence, the state violence. And also we have other organizations like Sintraco Valle that is working with the water workers that are fighting for the human right to have clean water. So the co-development has been working on that, and my role in this case is to be the bridge between those two and try to raise awareness that this problem is a problem of this capitalist system.
So I went 2 times to visit on delegations with a teacher delegation to visit the partners FECODE, which is the Federation of Colombian Educators, to understand their situation. So we visited the national offices, and then we split up the team in both times to go to different parts of Colombia to see projects or to talk about what was going on. Now the project we have with the BCTF and FECODE is called Schools, Territories of Peace, which is a response to the peace process. Now when the Civil War came to an end, I think it's still not totally resolved, they had a peace process that was run by the right-wing government, and it was very cynically run, so they were just seeing how the companies can get back in there and make a lot of money. There wasn't really a true intention to seek true peace among the people. But the schools and the teachers, which had been places of conflict, the teachers really do want to see peace. They really do want to have a transformation of their country to a country of peace. And so the School Territories of Peace project was a little bit of funding provided for schools and communities to think about what they want to do in their school and their community to make that place a place of peace, and to heal and move and remember and move forward in a really constructed way. They had a 2-day-long conference of all the teachers who were involved in the Schools Territories of Peace, and each one of those teachers presented what they were doing. And each one of those things was completely and utterly different, which really showed me professional autonomy, respect, and it wasn't like you had to do a certain thing. You had to decide what you were going to do and then try and do it with your kids. So for example, we heard some different ones, like there was a guy who was like a PE teacher who gave this self-analysis, as mostly he said, I realized that before I was a teacher, I was in the army, I had military training, and then I became a physical education teacher, and I realized that I was using a lot of militaristic things in my teaching. Like I would yell at the kids in a certain way, I'd blow my whistle, I would make them line up, I'd make them do kind of drills that were sort of military in aspect, and my own language was very tough. And I needed to self-regulate that and change. If I want a country of peace, I can't use that. We have to use different words, use different behaviors to make a more peaceful society.
I hope CoDev keeps working with the amazing organizations it's been working with for many decades, and I hope it also expands that work. And I hope it continues to educate union folks and here in Canada.
I hope that CoDev is able to continue to form partnerships and nurture the partnerships between Canadians and Latin Americans. It's a time when Latin America is very rarely in the news. It's a time when right-wing governments around the world are becoming in power. And it's a tough time, I think, for solidarity for many people, both in Canada and also in other countries. So I hope that these partnerships that we've formed, and some of them have been now 40 years old, like the partnership with the BC Teachers Federation, CUPE is not far behind in that respect. I think that if we can continue to use those partnerships to bring Canadians together, but also to ensure that news and information from Latin America continues to get here, that will help support our partners and communities in general in Latin America, but also continue to bring Canadians that awareness of what's going on in the world and how important it is for us as Canadians to take responsibility for both our government actions and for broader actions at other multilateral instances as well.
We're seeing a return to the kind of repression that we saw in the 1980s, and so it's more important than ever, I think, to maintain, and build on the solidarity relationships we have with the organizations that are like, throughout North America as well, facing a lot of kind of the reactionary, trying to turn the world back, to a less progressive way. And so, my hope for CoDev is it will continue to maintain the kind of solidarity and build, get new partners involved, engaged in the work as well.
Y bueno, en cuanto a la solidaridad internacional, mi opinión es que debemos de seguir trabajando todos los pueblos por lograr que haya más movimientos en el mundo alrededor de la solidaridad, no solo con respecto a Cuba, que en este caso somos nosotros, o estamos en Cuba hablando, no solo hablar de Cuba, sino yo creo que la América Latina y otros pueblos inclusive del mundo, más allá de la América Latina, necesitan de esos movimientos solidarios en el mundo para seguir sobre todo enalteciendo la labor que hacen los movimientos solidarios y además para seguir manifestando nuestra posición de repudio sobre todo a los actos de guerra y estoy pensando ahora mismo en Palestina, en el genocidio cruel que comete Israel con Palestina. Estoy pensando en los movimientos de derecha que hoy se hacen más fuertes en América Latina, en todas las cosas que se hacen de manera fraudulenta para mantener en el poder gobiernos que ni siquiera tienen el apoyo total del pueblo. O sea, yo creo que es necesario seguir trabajando en los movimientos solidarios y seguir trabajando en las causas justas de los pueblos.
Nosotros queremos aprovechar este momento para defender la solidaridad y defender la solidaridad a través de lo que CoDesarrollo hace todos los días. No sobran palabras para decir que han ayudado fielmente a miles de trabajadores cubanos, a dirigentes sindicales cubanos, y eso solo lo hacen los hermanos, solo lo hacen aquellas trabajadoras y trabajadores del mundo que defendemos la solidaridad, que estamos en contra de la guerra en cualquier parte del mundo, que defendemos la justicia social. Y eso es lo que ha sido para mí, desde la posición de secretario general, mantener este proyecto de cooperación. Por lo tanto, en nombre de todos esos trabajadores que a través de su trabajo, a través de solidaridad, a través de la justicia que ustedes han tenido con nosotros, felicidades en su 40 aniversario, que sigan teniendo éxito, que sigan ayudando a varios pueblos del mundo. Y para terminar, como decía un viejo guerrillero, pero una persona que los cubanos y las personas de buena voluntad lo llevamos siempre en nuestros corazones. Como decía el invicto Che Guevara, hasta la victoria siempre.